Welcome to the Sixth Wheels Consulting Podcast, dialoguing disability and discussing difference, inclusion, and all abilities in today's world. Now here are your hosts, Matthew Shapiro and Bob Nolly.
Yay! Ladies and gentlemen, you're back. You're back. This is episode 9, of the Sixth Wheels Consulting Podcast. I'm Bob Nolly, and here's my good buddy and your host, Matthew Shapiro.
Bob, how are you, sir?
I'm way past good, you can tell.
I love it. I love the enthusiasm.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's good. We're having a good time here. And Guess what? You know, it's kind of fun. I'm sure you had the same feeling as I do every time we do a show. We put it out there and it's done, and then we're done. And it's like, we don't hear any applause. Is anybody listening? Let me tell you, dude, it's working. I'm going to throw out some love here right now. Thanks to all these folks that very kind gave us a nice 5-star rating and gave us some love here. So Z Kirby Free Lunch, cool, said, love this pod. Matt Shapiro and the Six Wheels pod is something special. Dude, you're something special.
I love it.
Thank you, Z Kirby Free Lunch. Okay, Glee K for you said, love this. I think this is a great podcast. Of course it is. Go Matthew. Hey, see? Stand up. Take a bow. Here we go. All right. Wolf Team says, a move forward. There you go. Matt's podcast will be a great resource for not only those with disabilities, but to everyone. There we go. How about that?
Love it.
A lot of love. One more I got here. One more. Fred BES. Thanks, Fred BES, for listening. A great first podcast. This is such a beneficial topic for people with or without a disability. I'm looking forward to your next podcast. Us too, man. Fred BES, thank you very much for that. Okay, we got more folks. We'll do them another time. Okay, but thank you all. Thank you all very much. Isn't that cool to hear that? That's good to read that, isn't it?
We love when our listeners love what they're hearing, so that makes it good.
That's the whole point. That is the whole point. So this could be the straw that broke the camel's back.
That's a perfect segue.
So, you really sensitized me to this, the great straw debate. Mm-hmm. So everybody that's, laughing at us now, tell them what the great straw debate is.
Yeah. So within the last couple of weeks and months even, there has been this debate kind of amongst society to sort of go away with or be away with the whole idea of like plastic straws. And this push started from environmental groups that said, once again, plastic in our environment is harming, our animals, our environments, all kinds of great things like that. And while I am 100% on board of not wanting to harm animals and wanting to keep our lovely planet as pristine as possible, one of the populations of people that getting rid of straws would greatly affect, and I don't think people contemplated when they made some decisions like this, is the disability population. And once again, based on some of the decision makers that our based on some of our policymakers and our decision makers, again, I think the disability community has been completely sort of ignored when it comes to a decision or a policy decision that could affect a lot of people.
So we talk about policymakers here, in this age, we have no problem calling names. Is this at the federal level or is it at the local level or?
From what I've read and seen, I'll be honest, I've seen it more in certain states. So I think there's state level policies. I think I read somewhere that California was one of the states. I believe possibly Oregon was another one. People can certainly double check my knowledge on that. I know that I've just seen a lot of articles about it, seen a lot of debate amongst the disability population that, again, it becomes another situation where, once again, it's something else that somebody with a disability has to carry with them, right? Like, we're expected to carry our own ramps and carry our own water bottles and and carry, our medicines and other personal care apparatus that we might need when we go out in public. And so if you take away the use of plastic straws, like that's something else that the disability population has to be responsible for. Whereas the way that it's worked so previously, like obviously you can get a straw anywhere that you go to a restaurant. Now, I also want to phrase it in this way, right? Like I am not saying that I want to keep plastic straws altogether, right? Because I do see the challenges that plastic straws bring when it comes to our environments and our sea creatures and other creatures that are affected by plastics. But to completely wipe plastic straws off the map, I don't think is a smart move, right? Because I think if you had a select few straws that could be made available to people with disabilities, that's fine. Now, able-bodied individuals and people who don't necessarily use straws, like maybe they don't use straws, but where we get frustrated is where you're seeing a lot of these just straight out bans of plastic straws.
Yeah, that's I think when somebody hears an issue come up, whether it's straws or anyone, and it comes from the segment of the environmentalist, I could see this whole segment of people at the other end of the spectrum, whether they're red state folks or super conservatives, just kind of rock back and roll their eyes and go, "Oh, the tree huggers again."
Right.
I don't think that's the case here, because they're just supporting and encouraging us at every opportunity, which is their job and their right, to help us take care of the planet.
Right.
God knows we have not taken very good care of the planet.
Right.
So they mention this. I also look at it through the economist eye here. So if they say, "Oh yes," if they say, "No, we don't want to, keep them out of reach of the disabled. We just don't want them as broadly used." And then, okay, they'll be scarcer then. You'll have to get them somewhere, and it won't be out of, the little bucket by the register in a store you use or wherever you eat or something like that.
Right.
Will they be more costly to you?
And who knows? I mean, honestly, right? Like that, I think that's part of the debate. I think it becomes a situation where the other way I sort of describe this, right? And like another way of looking at this is the whole, and this drives me crazy as somebody who uses spoons on a regular basis. But back in the day, you never used to have to ask for a spoon when you were at the restaurant, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like it was always part of the utensils that you received when you sat down for a meal in a restaurant. Well, nowadays, basically, you get a fork, a knife, and that's about it. And so you often have to ask for a spoon. And so why could that not be the same scenario for straws, right? And where you would maybe then have to ask for a straw rather than having the person with the disability always have to be dependent on it. The other argument that you hear, and I have a story for this, the other argument that you hear from environmentalists and other people is, why can't you use metal straws or bamboo straws or, other straws that don't necessarily utilize plastic in the process? So one, I really wouldn't want to use a metal straw.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Because, how do you keep it clean? How do you not, if somebody with a disability has sensitive jaw or sensitive teeth or whatever the case may be, they could end up chipping something or hurting themselves on a metal straw. If you use like a bamboo straw or a biodegradable straw, I think, I talked about this when we did our travel episode many weeks back, but it's a situation where, I when I was on my trip in South Africa, I asked for a straw for one of the beverages I was using, and it was a biodegradable straw because, again, I guess that restaurant we were at, again, was kind of in the scenario where they didn't want to use plastic. But, I went to use the straw, and the straw melted in my drink, right? So I couldn't. I was drinking hot chocolate, I believe. It was really, really good hot chocolate, by the way. It was like drinking a candy bar, but the biodegradable straw basically melted in my drink because the beverage was so hot, and so like And plus, like, thinking about a bamboo straw, like, I really don't want to be drinking out of a straw that's like wood, right? Because it's kind of like, it's kind of hard to clean. It will taste funny.
Yeah, anything reusable, whether it be wood or steel, there's a cleaning issue.
Right.
And let me ask you this, and this is where I'm going to, this is one of those moments that we talked about in episode 1 where, okay, folks, watch Dr. Bob step into it right here.
Right.
So we're talking about disability usage being the same way other people use those plastic straws.
Right.
Correct? To absorb beverages.
Right. And it could, right, because, it could, obviously the main purpose would be beverages. Somebody might need help taking medication with a beverage. There might be some other situations where a straw might be needed for certain suction situations. People who have more severe disabilities.
That's the issue I was heading toward. There's more at stake here than just can I get my soda pop drunk?
Right. It's like people. Again, it's basically to a certain extent, it's basically taking away the simplest form of access, and it's creating another barrier for people with disabilities to overcome in order to either take medication or have a beverage or be out in the community again. Now, I'm not saying that's like there are certainly ways to like still be out in the community even if you don't have a straw. That's not what I'm saying, but it's ultimately like yet another barrier and yet another obstacle that people with disabilities may have to overcome. So, and by no means I don't want this to sound like me and other people with disabilities are complaining or moaning or groaning or whatever you want to say. But again, we feel like we were left out in the conversation with policymakers to come up with a more effective decision and effective solution to make both the disability community satisfied and the environmentalists satisfied.
Well, what you're doing here tonight, just having this conversation, is, perhaps just the beginning of a tool to rally the cause against that. Hey, you went out on the Six Wheels Consulting Facebook page and asked people for feedback on this. And
Sure.
That's great. And folks came out there. So, folks, if you don't hear your name called tonight with your thoughts on this, every time he goes out and does this, please give us feedback there. So you have plenty of time. I'm not going to read people's last names because we want to protect their identity. But we had some good friends respond here. Allison says, many people need straws and plastic bags to carry things. Not everyone has two free arms and hands that fully function. Go for it, Matthew. Thanks, Allison. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Hope you heard that. And Mary, I'll just call her Mary Mac. Mary says, I think the straws would be great. My son would be one of the people affected by this, as he cannot drink from a cup. I can't guarantee to always pack straws, and him drinking from a cup means 90% will end up on him. I remember those days.
I'm pretty sure I know Mary for certain, and her son's a toddler, so or a young child. So that's another population that not only does it affect people with disabilities, but how hard in some situations is it for young infants to do that. And again, like if we can come up with a better solution that's not just bamboo or is not a reusable metal straw or is not one of those biodegradable straws that melt, like that's great. And if our listeners know of other solutions, please share them with us on our Facebook page just to kind of continue this dialogue. But I again just sort of feel like that a decision was made without fully vetting all of the populations of people that this might be affected by.
So what decision has been made so far?
Well, I know that a lot of there are several big companies that are going away from plastic straws. I know Starbucks has come out and said that they are in agreement with this kind of straw ban, so to speak, and they're utilizing other types of drinking devices. Bob, I'm sure if you did a quick Google search, some other businesses would pop up. I know there have been several big fortune businesses to come out and begin support of the straw ban, and come up with be in support of helping the environment. But again, I feel like you're missing the disability population and how that affects them.
Yeah, sure. And Mary Mack went on to say, however, she does understand moving away from plastic and that perhaps there are more sustainable alternatives. I don't know, she says. Good topic, for sure. Thanks, Mary. Thanks a bunch for that. And, of course, we've always talked about the cleaning part of the sustainable alternatives. So,
yeah.
Yep. So here's Jill. Jill, thanks for your comment, too. I'm very much a green environmentalist. And if you Google image straws and see the images of them in the ocean, it might change your mind. I think they should still be available for kids of a certain age and people with disabilities. Oh, sure. But dramatically reduced for everyone else. Think of the impact if we did that. You would still be able to get all the straws that you had wanted. But they would be reduced for everything else. And that's a positive green impact there. I don't think, she says, that it's an either-or issue. Either we do it or not. Well, she said she didn't think it was an either-or issue. Either we do it or not. It's more how we do the right thing for the environment while still accommodating the people who need them. There you go. Nice job, Jill.
And I think that's ultimately what it boils down to, right? And I think Jill's point is very valid. And I appreciate her sharing her thoughts on that because, again, like, it sounds like they are putting up barriers for the disability population that don't necessarily need to be there. And I think Jill's point of sort of having a situation where we still have them available to those that don't need it, like she said, families with young children and the disability population, but maybe not everyone else who maybe can use a different alternative besides a straw. Maybe that's the route we need to consider going or talking about a little bit further.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And let's do one more here. Meg, how are you? I agree with this. Agree with what? Plastic straw should always be readily available for people with disabilities. Able-bodied people like myself can drastically cut down on straw usage. I've already started, and it's very easy. Applause, Meg. A lot of people are arguing that people with disabilities should just bring their own straws. How convenient. And also suggest metal straws, yuck, we already covered that, for them to carry as well. That is what I have an issue with. People with disabilities have to bring their own everything, ramps, cups, and so forth. The country already has such a massive issue with accessibility, and able-bodied people don't seem to see or care about that. My issue with metal straws is, number one, they're not bendable. There you go. Number two, some people with disabilities have serious sensitivities to a lot of things. A metal straw could cause skin reaction or burn, and as we also said, get dirty and all of this. So it's unpleasant. Meg, that's a great, very thoughtful response. Thanks very much for that.
Well, and I think what Meg brings up there is something that we haven't even really touched on too, right? But it's like, how not only do we just love bendy straws because they're awesome, but
and they make that cool noise,
right? They do that nice little crackling noise. But bendy straws are also help with accessibility, right? Because somebody might not have the range of motion in order to be able to get to a just straight narrow straw. So a bendy straw, like, is another kind of accommodation that is put in place that we have available to us. But if this ban kind of goes everywhere, you might not necessarily have that. And first of all, I just love bendy straws because they're cool. But again, there's another layer of that.
What's your favorite color one? Do you have a favorite color one you always try to grab?
Oh, I mean, my favorite color is always red in anything. So if I can get anything in red and have that cool popping noise when you bend the straw, I'm all about that. But again, that's another layer of accessibility and another barrier that comes through the environment, and it's just, we feel like an afterthought to a certain extent when they made this decision, and it's, it always makes me scratch my head. I've been kind of on top of this topic for a little while now since I first heard about it. I think my mom was the first one to tell me about it. And I was fortunate enough to do. I have a friend of mine who is a producer for Al Jazeera America, and they did a whole web segment on this whole conversation, right? And how, the whole straw conversation, and I was fortunate enough to have my comment. I did a video comment, and it was played on that air, and so. I've been really tied into this conversation since it started, and that's another reason that I wanted to hear from our listeners. Wanted to get their feedback on this conversation too, and I really think we need to come up with a solution where everyone's happy, and make it so that it doesn't become another barrier that people with disabilities have to overcome. Bob, I'm curious, as an able-bodied individual, like, one, before you and I had talked about maybe doing this episode, had you heard that there was a potential straw ban? And, what are your thoughts about it coming from the able-bodied perspective?
That's a great question. And that's Joy say to me, so I'm saying that back to you. Yeah. I have to admit that I was not sensitized to this at all. When you said, let's talk about the straws, I went, what about them? And, I caught up on the issue a little bit. And from my perspective, I would just, I've been sensitized to the point where I will minimize or eliminate my usage of them.
Right.
All right. If I go to some kind of restaurant or food place, that I'm standing up and I'm going, there's that straw for me to take from the counter where they have the sugar for your coffee and all that stuff. I'm for, taking them out. But What I'm more concerned about is if you're there, you can get one.
Right. And even if it's a situation where you have to ask a store representative, if they keep a few sort of behind the counter, so to speak, I'm fine with that, and I am in support. Like I've stated a couple times, and I hate to reiterate it, but I'm in support of doing things that are going to help the environment, but not at the expense of making life more inclusive and accessible and easier to access for the disability population. And I keep hitting on that point because that's really what this whole podcast is about, and I want our community and our society to be more cognizant and inclusive and open-minded to people with disabilities and the disability population. And sometimes, with an instance like this, I feel like we're going backwards rather than moving forward.
Yeah. Sometimes we do that. It's a sign of the times. That's a sign of the times.
Sure.
So I'll let you have the last word.
Well, we're going to periodically as sort of as issues pop up in the news, or as we hear from our listeners about certain issues that are going on in our communities, we're going to have episodes like this where we talk about the issues that are affecting our communities and are affecting our population. So, we were excited to talk about this issue, and as more pop up, we're gonna continue to do that. So they might not be your. We'll keep our ears to the ground as some of those issues that affect the disability population come up, because we want to talk about them. And if you, our listeners, hear of any issues, please let us know about them on our Facebook page. We certainly encourage you to continue listening to all of the episodes. You can find us on SoundCloud and iTunes. The link is all over all of the Six Wheels social media pages that we've talked about previously. New episodes are going to be coming out. We've basically narrowed it down to they'll be coming out on Tuesdays, so everyone kind of have their ear to the ground when those new episodes hit on Tuesdays, and just continue to have these great dialogues with us. And we hope that you are really enjoying these conversations that we're having. We're gonna continue to evolve, and we've got some things lined up where we're going to be bringing some guests on to future episodes to talk about future topics. And so we want to continue to expand this interactive opportunity. So I'm going to keep posting questions on Facebook, so please keep responding. If you'd like to be a guest, please let us know.
Oh, we'd love to have you on. We would love to have you.
Love to have you on and get your insights on some of these issues that we're talking about and how they affect people with disabilities. And just keep leaving comments and giving us great 5-star ratings on iTunes and SoundCloud and our other platforms. And just continue to be the amazing listeners that you are. And
applause. Let me underline that again. Folks, as I said in the last episode, it's time for you to support Matthew and all the work he's doing. And one really easy way you can do that is go to iTunes and hit the subscribe button. That gives his show a lot of lift and moves him up in the new and noteworthy and lets Apple know that you guys are listening. So that's easy to do. So
and you can also do that on SoundCloud as well. We have a page on SoundCloud, so go give us likes there as well. I've posted the links on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. They're all over our social media. So go give them a listen and if there's a topic that you want us to talk about, let us know, and we can certainly try and fit it into our catalog schedule that we're gonna be creating. And we thank you for your support. And I really, my ultimate goal for this podcast is that these conversations are changing the way you, our listeners, are thinking about disability and approaching disability, so that the next time, whether you're affected by it in your community or in your family or not, the next time you see somebody with a disability, you have a different set of mindsets or a different set of tools that you can draw on when that interaction occurs.
All right.
So,
that's good. That's it. Applause right there.
Kudos to our listeners, and we look forward to having more episodes, and we'll talk to you guys very, very soon.
Okay. Once again, tonight, thanks to Allison and Mary Mac and Jill and Meg for your input as well. Ladies and gentlemen, you have been listening to episode 9 of the Six Wheels Consulting Podcast. Look forward to see you next time. Until then, think inclusion. Keep rolling forward. See you next time.